Hi everyone, welcome to a Centrist View. I'm Ghost. I realized I never introduced myself in my videos, so hi. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. So far I've been focusing on federal government, but this time I want to drop it back a bit and I want to talk a little bit about local government. Not so much state, but cities or towns, municipalities, whatever, or county. My property sits in what's known as an unincorporated part of the county, and it's very desolate. It's a very rural area. There's something called a comprehensive plan that's actually a federal requirement, and what that is each state has to come up with, actually each county within each state has to make a land use designation map, which basically decides that this area is going to stay rural. This is where, this area can be urban, this area for commercial, this area for industrial. That way you don't have a chemical plant next to your dairy farm. And it makes sense. And it also is to make sure that everything isn't overdeveloped. We keep some open space and some natural areas and so on and so forth. Where I live, there is a zoning issue, and it's a big one. I technically live in a subdivision. It's over 5,000 lots. Minimum lot size 1 acre. Some are larger. I technically have 2 lots. They're 1 1/4 acre each. They're adjacent to each other. So, it's a very, very large area. Now, the thing about this area is, way back 55 years ago, back in 1969, it was rezoned from a rural zoning to what they call single-family residential. And the intention was the area was going to be developed with power and water. I'm completely off grid. It's miles to any municipal utilities. So they were going to do this development, and between the years of 1969 and 1974, they rezoned 15, over the whole 5,000 plus lots, was rezoned in 15 separate sections. And then the development started. Sections 9 and 11 received water and power. But the other 13 sections never did. It was abandoned. So they rezoned it under the condition from a rural to a single-family residential, under the condition that it was going to be developed. Now, there are laws on the books and such, so what, and so not. I mean, I'm not even going to get into it all, but they date back to like 1925. That says that your zoning code, whether single-family residential, rural, etc., has to match the land designation map. So where I live, we are under a land designation of what's called medium intensity rural. And according to state statute and federal law, the zoning code has to fall under that category. Well, right now they have us under a zoning code called CR1. And when you look up what that means, that's a medium intensity urban code. So it doesn't match. It doesn't match the land designation. Medium intensity urban allows for a higher population than medium intensity rural by about 4 residences per acre. And that's a big difference, especially when out where I live, people are trying to raise chickens and pigs and grow food and things like that. You don't want it getting overcrowded. You need the fresh air and the open space and the sunshine, and you don't need 5 houses per lot, blocking all your sun and everything else, whatever. I'll quit rambling about that. Anyway, so we've been in this this fight with the county I live in. It started back in 2019 over this zoning. They're insisting we follow this code. But there's a law in the books that says if a property is rezoned for development and that development is not completed within 5 years, they can either apply for an extension, or they can either apply for an extension, or the property has to revert back to its original zoning code, which would be back to a rural. Now, why this matters? As I mentioned, I live off grid. We don't have any utilities. To meet the code, and we also aren't, many of us out here live in fifth wheels, RVs, things like that, because they're self-contained. And it's a lot easier to provide power and water to a unit that is self-contained than to try to build a house. Several people out here have built tiny homes, 200 square feet, adorable little places too. Well, the current zoning code, the single-family residential, is not allowing tiny homes, anything under 400 square feet. You can't live in a fifth wheel or an RV or anything like that. It has to be a wooden site-built home. Minimum's 400 square feet, on and on and on. Anyway, so without boring you with all the minute details, bottom line is, the two sections of this subdivision that were developed with water and power, in order for them to build a 400 square foot home that will meet the zoning code, would cost approximately $100,000 according to the national average. And actually I did this research about a year ago, but it came from Market Watch and Forbes and This Old House, and they all came out with roughly the same price. Now, that doesn't include a $10,000 environmental impact fee and hundreds of dollars worth of building permit fees and quite a few others. So if the people over in sections 9 and 11 of this subdivision that have the water and power were going to build the minimum required house to meet the code, they would have to put out roughly $100,000 to build it. If we here in the other 13 sections that don't have power and water, and when I see the develop, I'm talking about, I think it's maybe 500 lots out of 5,000 that have power and water available to them. I thought maybe, clarify a few things. So if we were going to build the exact same home for 400, 400 square foot home to meet the code, we would have to spend about $160,000 because we have to build an electrical system that will meet the code, more than likely solar. We also have to build a water storage system and a water delivery system that'll accommodate a 400 square foot home. And then we also have to put in a septic that will meet the code and accommodate a 400 square foot home. So the numbers, and once I looked up all the prices, it came up to about $160,000 for us to build a home. But the real kick in the pants is that if we wanted to turn around and sell our home, we wouldn't be able to get nearly as much money for them. So we have a much higher cost of investment for a lower return. Now, all of these things that I'm talking about, there's all kinds of legal terms, and I won't bore you with that. But essentially what it comes down to is that this law is creating an undue hardship. And it is, because it's ridiculously expensive. And no sane person is going to spend more to get less, because off-grid homes are not worth as much as homes that are built on properties with available utilities. So we have to basically put in a higher investment for a lower return. And there's a federal law, goes all the way back to the 1920s, that says that zoning laws must be sane and practical. Well, there's nothing sane or practical about that. And basically, in the 50 years since it was rezoned this way, only about 400 homes have been built on 5,000 lots. And it's because it's a stupid investment. It makes no sense. So the whole thing that comes down to is that one section, those two sections that I mentioned, those homes are, I think they're valued at roughly $300,000 homes, $200,000 to $300,000 homes, roughly. And the people who lived there, actually, it was just a few people who moved in a few years ago, decided that we are riffraff. In fact, one of the quotes is, the people who live off grid over there are the type of people who eat out of garbage cans. Well, I'll be honest, most of us are financially challenged. A lot of people on fixed incomes. It's not a wealthy area, but we're not riffraff just because we're not rich. Just because we can't afford a $350,000 home doesn't make us riffraff. It doesn't mean we eat out of garbage cans. And basically, they've made it their mission to try to get us out. So what they do is they get in their little 4x or their little cars or whatever it is, and they actually drive 5 miles from their developed section to the section over here where I live, and they drive around and sometimes trespass on our property, take pictures of our property, and report us to the county for violations because we're living in a fifth wheel, or we have a shed on our property. Oh my goodness, you're not allowed to have that in the zoning. Or, you know, because we happen to have building materials here because we are actually trying to build something. And oh, no, you can't have building materials in your yard in CR1 zoning. And it just goes on and on. So today, I joined a neighbor and went with her for moral support to court. She had been taken to court for zoning violations. Now, you have to understand, this woman's property is not a pigsty. It is really nice. Yes, she is living in a fifth wheel, but it's a really nice fifth wheel. And she has a beautiful porch built, and she has horses and pigs and chickens, and she has corrals built for them, and they're always clean, and her place is organized, and and they have decided to use her as an example, and they have been hitting her hard. So they took her to court in December and decided that she had to pay all these thousands and thousands of dollars and have all this stuff done to bring her property into compliance. Now, remember earlier in the video, I mentioned that the zoning code isn't legal. So they are forcing us, and the friend that I went to court with today is only one of roughly 100 people they are harassing this way. Oh no, I lost my train of thought. Give me a sec, sorry. Okay, yeah. So they decided she had to pay all these thousands of dollars to bring into compliance with a code that is not legal. When we were in court in December, well, I say we, it was her case, but I was with her then too, and I helped do all the research for the case. We challenged the legality of the zoning code. The county never proved that it is legal. We proved that it does not meet the statute. We proved that. The county was not ever able to prove otherwise, yet the judge ruled in favor of the county anyway. Imagine that, right? Yeah. Now, I will admit today the judge was much better. He was much more fair than I felt like he was in December. I'll get back to that in a minute. Okay, so they decided that she had to pay these thousands and thousands of dollars that legally she doesn't owe, because in the code, the legal code for this, we can live in fifth wheels. We it's more, I mean, there are some permits that would have to be obtained, yes. But we don't have to build a $100,000, 400 square foot house. We can live in a fifth wheel and things like that. And yet they're requiring us to abide a code and suing people for being non-compliant with a code that's not compliant with the law. I mean, really, it makes the headache. I've had a beating headache all day. Imagine that. They're telling her to, this county is telling her to be, you need to come up into compliance with a code that's not compliant with the law. It makes no sense. So, anyway, the county never proved that this is an illegal code. Now, she has been in constant contact, and she has actually been working very hard to get her property into compliance. It requires a lot, including an architect, site plan, and on and on. And the architect she was working with bailed, and anyway, it's a lot of stuff, but it's all legit, and we can it's all documentable. And she's been in constant contact with the county. And she had even asked them to try to help her with getting an extension, and because she wasn't going to be able to have it all done by April 4th because of all the complications and all of the money that was needed. She was going to need some more time to get it all together. And the county decided to sue her for contempt of court because she wasn't in compliance. Here's the kicker. They did give her a minor extension until the end of May, but they never notified her that they gave her an extension. So we go to court today for contempt of court. The county's up there saying that she has not acted in any good faith or anything. Yeah, we had documents to show she's applied for this, she's paid for that. She was able to submit it all, and we actually had a small win today. She's still being forced to come up into a compliance with a code doesn't comply with the law, which is just so messed up. I don't even know where to start. But the judge did not hold her in contempt, and you should have seen the prosecutor's face. I'm not a fan. He's one of those types of lawyers that gives all lawyers a bad name. So she was not, and then the county was asking for a very steep fine. The judge said, I will not give that amount of fine. I will impose a fine of a much, much lower amount. But it's suspended, and if she's able to do this, and this by the end of September, well, then she won't have a fine at all. So, considering what has been going on since 2019 with the county thing, this is the first thing that's even close to a victory. And you know what? I'll take it and I'll celebrate it. But why? How is it that how do we stop this? Moth on my shoulder. Sorry. The county has all the power. And, if we want to fight them, we have to pay for their lawyer. And we have to get a lawyer for ourselves. The county gets a lawyer at taxpayer expense. But the people don't get their tax dollars. They don't get to use... the county gets to use your tax dollars to prosecute you, but you don't get to use your tax dollars to defend yourself. And, they call that justice. Well, I'm not really entirely sure I call that justice, but whatever. Excuse me. But what do y'all think of zoning laws? I can understand building codes to a point, safety reasons. I like to know that the building I'm in has been built well. But one of the things is this environmental impact fee. And this is another problem. About a year ago, the United States Supreme Court ruled that these impact fees are questionable in the legality. Under certain conditions, they are legal. Under certain other conditions, they are not. Where I live falls into the conditions that they are not. This is no small fee. It's $9,700. It is ridiculous. And where I live, we have dirt roads. We don't have any kind of streetlights. We don't have any kind of utilities. We have no parks, no public transportation. We have absolutely nothing. So last year, in a case called Sheets versus the County of El Dorado County in California, Sheets versus El Dorado County. A man sued the county over impact fees he was forced to pay. And part of the case was that he was not able to get building permits until he paid the impact fee. Now, his impact fee was ridiculous. I think it was like 20 grand. It was insane. But so he ended up getting the money and paying it, but then he sued to get it back. Well, it took 12 years, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And in the spring of 2024, the Supreme Court ruled that the impact fees must benefit the development, that they must be going toward development project that is already in progress or scheduled, and also ruled that denying building permits on the basis of paying impact fees is extortionate. That was Justice Sotomayor who wrote that. But yet, this county is still extorting people, and you cannot get a building. Now, I spoke with a member of my district supervisor, the county supervisor district. I spoke with a member of her staff and addressed that. And I mentioned that the Supreme Court ruled that's extortion and you can't do that. And he told me the county's not just going to stop doing what they're doing because, and I rudely interrupted him. And I said, because of a Supreme Court decision? Really? The county's not going to change their extortionate policies after the Supreme Court ruled that they are not allowed, that they're not allowed to extort the public? Well, he got a little quiet after that, didn't have much to say, but I'm hoping for a future meeting I'm working on right now, future meeting with the head of the zoning department and the supervisor and such, to discuss these issues, and we'll see what happens. And this is all the precursor to a federal lawsuit if the county doesn't wise up. And wise up is a bad term, but if the county doesn't start complying with the law, we're going to take it to federal court. Now, there's so much more to it. We've been threatened and harassed by one of the inspectors, and one of the neighbors got it on video, so we have that. Just, the fact that they haven't even proven that it's legal, yet still keep barging along, forcing us to comply with a code that does not comply with state and federal law. It's just so many things. You buy property, you want to be able to live on it, right? Now, I agree with some zoning codes. I deliberately bought property in an area that only allows 1 residence per acre, because I didn't want 50 people living next door. I wanted sparsely populated area. So even, 1 residence next door to me is too many. But at least I can, I won't have, 5 families over there. So I can understand some zoning laws. But to require an urban code in a rural area that has no power, no water, no sewer system, has nothing, zero, no even roads. We have dirt roads and they're not even county maintained. Well, 4 of them are. 4 of them are county maintained, none of the others. My road is county maintained to a point, but the section of it I live on is not county maintained. And I'm actually okay with it, but the point is, what are we paying for? People call taxes theft. I personally don't have a problem with reasonable taxes. I have a problem with misuse of taxes. But $9,700 environmental impact fee and get nothing for it? Now, come on. Now, that's just bullshit. Oops. Sorry, YouTube. I know, nobody watches my videos, and I just, keep trying to make them. But if anybody actually sat through this weird-ass rant, because that's really just what it is, it's a rant. I wound up from court today, and we actually had the small victory, and it's the first one in 6 years. So I'm feeling a little good. But if anybody's actually watching this, tell me what you think about zoning codes. And if anybody from any municipalities, why don't you try to explain what exactly I'm paying for? Because I can't figure it out. You know, I mean, I haven't paid mine, and I don't actually intend to, but I got a few loopholes there, where I actually don't have to because of some loopholes. But it's it's ridiculous. I mean, these are really low cost. This is low cost. I mean, not low cost land. This is extremely affordable land. We're having this huge housing crisis. Working class families can afford land here. They could possibly afford to build a tiny house or put a fifth wheel on it and have a home. There's 5,000 vacant lots, and the only reason no one's living on them is because the zoning is so restrictive. During the worst housing crisis America's ever seen, it's almost like they would rather see people living in cars than just reverse the zoning back to what it was supposed to be, and that's absurd. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's no logic to it, but yet the law says you have to revert it back, but they still won't do it. Yeah, I know, I'm just ranting on, and well, I'll stop here pretty soon because I don't have my glasses on. I figured I'd not wear shades for once. By the way, my dark glasses, if you've ever seen any of my other videos, they are prescription, the only glasses I have right now. So if I'm actually reading something, I have to wear them. But tell me what you think of zoning laws like I mentioned. I mean, do they make sense? Am I missing something? Because, you know, inquiring minds would really want to know. I just don't get it. I mean, the county isn't actually developing anything, so why am I paying them an impact fee, which basically goes toward development of roads and streetlights and whatever else? But they aren't building any roads out here. I mean, they aren't even maintaining the roads they have. So I'm happy for our little tiny win in this one battle of a big war. I'm hoping it's a start to see the turn of the tides. I know most of you probably don't care, but if you're in a similar situation, I'd like to hear about it, and I'd like to hear if you won, and especially if you won. And I'd like to know how, and if you used an attorney, I'd like to know who. So I guess I will quit rambling, and I hope you all, it's pretty late where I am, but it's still ungodly hot. So I will let you all go, and I'll get my dog to quit breathing on me, and I hope you all have a really great night.